He opened his phone on his own birthday and saw his son smiling on a dock, champagne raised to another woman, while a caption crowned her the heart of the family. The boat was brand new, the applause loud, and his name wasn't anywhere. "You used my name and erased me," he whispered, and the crack that had been growing for years finally split wide open. Before we dive into today's story, let us know where you're watching from. And as you watch, don't just sit back, be part of the experience. If a moment grabs your attention, whether it's powerful, unexpected, or deeply moving, drop a comment with the timestamp of that scene and share your thoughts. Your reactions bring the story to life, and we love seeing which moments resonate with you the most. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, grab a coffee or tea, settle in, and let's begin. I wake before the first thread of daylight touches the blinds. The kitchen carries a clean chill that smells faintly of salt from the sound, the kind of air that makes you stand a little straighter. One click and the small dome light over the counter settles into its amber circle. Grain lines run like riverbeds across the cutting board. I planed myself, honest in their direction, honest in their flaws. I fill the kettle, set it on the burner, and breathe with the slow tick of metal heating. When the water begins to murmur, I fold a paper filter into the dripper and measure coffee the way I always do. By eye, by habit, by years of mornings I chose to be awake for. The first pour darkens the grounds and releases that deep, almost chocolate smell. I slice a heel from last night's cinnamon loaf. The crust is shiny where a brush of butter met heat. The inside is tender, brown sugar and spice tucked into pale crumb. It's a ritual I keep for October, my private cake with no candles. The phone lies face down by the mug, a small stone I don't want to skip across the day. I turn it over anyway. The screen wakes to a photograph that fills the frame. Ethan, my son, tall in a blazer, arm around Marlene, his wife's mother. Cafe lights string along a marina dock. The water behind them is black glass, scored with gold. They hold flutes and smile like people who know where the camera is. A cake on the table behind them shows neat gold letters. The caption reads, "You deserve the world." I don't refresh, I don't check the call log. My birthday sits in the calendar like a quiet thumbtack, exactly where it always is, needing no witness to exist. I set the phone on its face and blow on the coffee, watching steam curl in the cone of light. Somewhere down the hill, a bus releases its air brakes. Somewhere farther, a ferry horn lifts and falls, low and certain. I let the sound travel through me and remind my back to lengthen and my breath to settle. The first bite of bread is warm and steady. Cinnamon comes first, then butter, then the clean heat of coffee. I think about the years the grain in a board taught me patience. Measure twice, cut once. Keep the blade true, accept that wood will tell you what it wants if you're listening. I worked long days and came home smelling like sawdust and weather, but I came home. I let a small memory pass through, like sawdust drifting in a shaft of sun, the last time he remembered my birthday. A late call, an apology wrapped in laughter. A tone people use when something is fixed, and they want you to agree it was never broken. I said it was fine. And it was fine, in the way a surface is fine until a splinter finds the soft place. I sweep the thought away. I have no use for it before breakfast. Steam thins, then disappears. The kettle ticks as it sheds heat. The apartment is modest and square and clean, the kind of place that feels made rather than decorated. On the shelf I built, my books lean shoulder to shoulder, manuals, a few paperbacks, a church sale cookbook that still sheds flour dust from its spine. A coin from a sober year lives in the drawer, but I don't take it out. The proof I need is already on the table. Coffee, bread, steadiness. I rinse the knife and set it on the rack. I wipe crumbs into my palm and drop them into the bin. The ferry calls again, already farther out, moving toward a shore I can't see from here. The sound is an old comfort, like a shop whistle or a church bell, something that tells you the day has started whether or not you are ready for it. I'm ready enough. I finish the slice and sit with the last inches of coffee cooling in the cup. I don't plan anything past this small breakfast. Planning turns into bargaining when it comes to people you love. Instead, I let the room and the morning claim their share. The walls take the light. The window shows a band of pewter where water meets sky. I stack the plate, the knife, the mug. The sink accepts them without comment. I stand for a long beat and listen to the building's quiet bones settle. I'm not much for saying things out loud, not anymore. But as I reach for my jacket and then decide to leave it on the chair, I allow myself one line, simple as I can make it, and without any angle. Happy birthday, Daniel. Not to fill a silence, not to mark what's missing, but to acknowledge what remains. I sit back down and let the warmth of the mug travel into my hands. The phone is face down. The water speaks in the distance. For now, the morning is only coffee and wood and breath I can keep. The video launches by itself the moment I flip the phone. Music rides in thin through the tiny speaker, all bright strings and tinny claps, and there they are again. Ethan with his arm set just so around Marlene, marina lights trembling on black water like coins dropped into a well. Someone swings the camera wide to catch the table. Roses in a low bowl, glass candle holders, a cake with buttercream edges so smooth they look lacquered. The caption blooms under their faces like a verdict. Love you, Mom. I don't blink for a long breath. I let the loop finish, then let it start again. I tap out of it and open the calendar. Today is ringed in red, a polite notification from a machine that never forgets. I don't need it to tell me what day it is, but the small dot has the same effect as a hand on the shoulder. Present, steady, not trying to be more than it is. No messages sit beneath it. No voicemail badge, just the dot and the quiet around it. The coffee is cooled to perfect when I open the banking app. Blue light spreads over my knuckles, makes my skin look like someone else's. The numbers fall into place the way they always do. Checking, savings, and then the line that doesn't move. An injury settlement from a year I would rather not stack against any other $92,000, untouched since the day it landed. It sits there like a sealed box on a high shelf. No strings attached, and yet I've let it be the string I didn't pull. I scroll back 1 year in the activity list until I find the transfer to Ethan and Tessa's landlord. 6 months bundled into a single clean payment. A relief offered before it had to be asked for out loud. I remember the receipt email landing in my inbox, subject line, polite as a bow. I archived it without forwarding it, the way you pocket a loose nail so no one steps on it. Some gifts are better off without wrapping paper. Back to the video. I scrub along the bar until the camera floats past the toasts and the laughter to a longer shot of the dock. The lens finds a hole tied with ribbon near the stern. The paint shines the way new paint shines. A surface that hasn't yet learned the language of sun and water. The registration decals are crisp, numbers too fresh to have curled at the edges. The stainless rails show no fingerprints of salt, no matte scuffs, only that factory gleam that says more about a showroom than a season. Not rented, not borrowed. New. I'm not sure what part of me relaxes as I register that. Maybe the part that has been telling a softer story just to make the day round off at the corners. It isn't about totals, I realize, not in the way people like to make sums of things. It's about who gets written into the scenes and who is cropped out without anyone saying the word. Money buys the ribbon. The caption writes the myth. I breathe out, and the ache that has been living behind my ribs clicks into place, like lumber meeting a true line. There's relief in that soundless click. Not rage, not the old bargaining where you explain people to themselves until they agree to remember you. Just clarity clean enough to see my hands in. The laptop lives on the shelf under the phone. I set the phone down and pull the computer into the circle of light. The hinge opens on its small hush. I type 3 words I've never put together before. Whidbey Island Cabin. The results flower across the screen, porches thrown toward the water, cedar beams the color of toast, small docks like fingers laid out for a pulse. In one listing, a window opens onto nothing but alder and blue. In another, a table waits under a skylight, the wood soft and pale as bread. I scroll slowly, the way you walk through a shop of tools you know how to use, eyes and hands working together, measuring without a ruler. The images do a strange thing. They don't promise anything. They don't ask me to earn them. They simply suggest a scale of living that has room inside it for a man to breathe without asking permission. A narrow porch with a chair that rocks toward the sound. A kitchen with a single wide drawer for long-handled tools. A dock only wide enough for one pair of boots. Silence included. I bookmark one that has a wraparound porch and windows trimmed in a gray that looks like old rain. I save another to a folder I name with nothing more creative than cabins. I'm not making a plan. Plans have a way of turning into apologies when people are involved. This is different. This is like laying out boards to see which way the grain wants to run. The video is still open in a tab at the side of the browser. The frozen frame catches Ethan mid-toast, mouth a small oval, eyes trained on light. A ribbon knots at the corner of the screen where a boat waits behind him like a parenthesis. I click the tab and let it play one last time without sound. When the caption rolls under, it looks harmless without music, only black letters doing what they were told. I say it very quietly and only once, so I hear it more than I speak it. Not this time. I close the video tab and leave the listings open, little squares of wood and window stitching themselves into a quiet quilt. The mug is nearly empty. Somewhere out toward the strait, a horn pushes one long note across the water, and the note reaches me without effort. The phone goes back on its face. The laptop stays warm under my palms. I don't know anything beyond this moment, and that feels less like a loss than a door. I click the star next to another porch and watch it glow, a small mark that says, "Remember this." The day has made its pivot in the size of a screen, and outside the ferries move as if they know the way without looking. The ferry takes the weight of my truck with a metal groan and settles into its own breathing. I climb the stairs to the passenger deck and step into wind that tastes like a cold coin. Seattle stacks itself behind me in gray-blue blocks. The skyline always looks like someone set it up carefully and could knock it down with 2 fingers. A gull rides the bow wake like it owns the morning. When the horn sounds, the note rolls through my ribs and resets my clock. I put my hands on the painted rail and let the chop decide the rhythm for me. The lower back answers with a bright stitch. I lengthen my spine and breathe until the stitch loosens. I don't think about leaving anyone. The deck smells of diesel, kelp, and coffee from paper cups. A man in an orange vest checks tie-downs and nods at no one in particular. I watch the ferry cut a seam through the water, neat as a saw kerf. The pictures I saved last night, porches, cedar, small docks like fingers, hover in my head until the actual shoreline takes over. The sound is a book I can read without translation. Chop means wind to the north. Pale ruffles mean tide on the move. I stand in that knowledge like a man stands in boots that fit. We nose toward Whidbey, and the light changes to the particular pewter I only see on water crossings. Off at starboard, a tug pushes a barge heavy with timber. The scale steadies me. When the crew waves us down to vehicles, I go with the slow procession, tires bumping over the ramp. The island roads are 2 lanes. The center line, a series of yellow dashes pulling me forward. Alder, cedar, and blackberry thickets slip by, the kind of green that keeps its own counsel. The GPS pings once, then once more, and I take a gravel turn that crunches under the tires like hard bread. The cabin appears in a shallow bowl of trees, painted a slate that has forgotten its original name. The porch wraps around as if the house were built to listen. A real estate agent waits with a manila folder tucked under her arm and a key on a blue plastic tag. "Shall we?" she says. "We shall." Inside, the small living room offers a wood stove with a glass door still clouded from someone else's fire. The kitchen is a straight run of cabinets with a laminate counter that wants replacing someday, not today. I twist a faucet. It spits rust for a heartbeat and then clears as if the place had to clear its throat before speaking. A hinge lifts and closes without complaint. Honest work. She walks me through the rooms. A bedroom just big enough for a bed and a dresser, a back room that could hold a saw, and a bench if I asked politely. We stop at the window that frames the cove. Water breathes in a language older than everybody we know. "Initial here and here," she says at the counter. Pages turn, clauses read. It isn't complicated, and it isn't nothing. The cashier's check slides across like a small ship docking. My pen scratches where it's told. The key changes hands. "Congratulations." "Thank you." On the porch, the boards answer underfoot with a mild, well-raised creak. A single rocking chair faces the water as if it has been practicing for my weight. I raise the phone and frame myself head and shoulders with the cove behind me, hair a little wind-tossed, face unperformed. One click. No caption. I slide the phone back into my pocket the way a workman pockets a small tool. Casual, final, useful only to him. It vibrates before I reach the step. Ethan's name blooms on the screen, white on black, as familiar as the shape of my own hands. I let it ring. The sound moves through the boards and into the rail. The second call starts before the first echo is gone. I let that one ring too. Not a test, not a punishment. Just nothing left to explain. Something dark breaks the surface in the cove, a seal taking a measure, and then slides under again as if it had seen enough. At the fence line, a figure lifts a hand. He wears a watch cap and an old Navy pea coat that has known salt. "Alvarez, across the way," he says when he's close enough. We talk about the cold current that sneaks in mornings like this. He studies my hands the way carpenters always do, checking for the map of old work. "Good wood out here. It minds a firm hand. That's the plan." He nods once as if we've struck an agreement with fewer words than usual and heads back along the fence with a gait that says he will outlast the weather. I carry a box from the truck and set a small lamp on the floor. The room takes the light the way dry wood takes oil, quietly, then completely. I leave cabinet doors open to let the place know me. A heating pad warms the small of my back while I roll out a simple bedroll. I write today's date on the corner of an envelope. Nothing ceremonial, just the truth of a day, and tuck it in the folder with the papers. In the sink, the last of the rust ghosts, the edge of the drain, and vanishes. By the time dark settles, water knocks the shore in a slow practice. A distant buoy bell counts some measure I don't need to name. On the porch, air moves from the cove toward the trees and back again, a tide with lungs. I switch off the lamp and lie down. Ceiling boards cross above me, straight, trusting their nails. The quiet that finds me isn't empty, it's full of all the noise that didn't follow me here. I feel sleep arrive like a boat coming in on a line, sure, smooth, right on time. And for the first time in years, nothing in my head argues with it. The townhouse door opens on the kind of warmth you can plug in. Candles already lit, a runner on the table the color of champagne, napkins folded into tidy envelopes that promise better people will arrive any minute. A vase of white lilies makes the room smell like a hotel lobby, trying to pass for a garden. Marlene appears first with arms open and cheekbones lifted under practiced light. "You look great." "We missed you, Tessa," follows with the sort of smile that knows where the lens would be if there were one. Ethan rises halfway, then changes his mind and reaches for a bottle instead. 2 wine glasses already stand full. My place is set. My phone stays face down beside the plate. Small talk steps out in the order they prefer. Weather, ferry delays, a joke about island time. Tessa asks about the drive and tilts her head just enough to look engaged. Marlene lifts a linen corner and straightens a knife. Ethan keeps glancing at my hands like he expects to see a message written there. The salmon arrives on white plates with roasted lemon halves and a mound of late-season beans shining with oil. Everything is composed. Everything could be posted with no edits. I take a bite and let the heat and salt settle the part of me that dislikes theater even when the costumes are kindness. The first probe is feathered as courtesy. Ethan clears his throat and aims for casual. So, about that house. Kinda sudden. Marlene drops in a spoonful of concern. You didn't use your savings, did you? Tessa folds it all into a sentence about keeping everyone in the loop. The table is friendly and the loop is a leash. I place my fork down and make sure my voice is even. You didn't ask. Silence lands like a sheet of glass. No crack, no shatter, just a polished stillness that shows every face too clearly. Marlene laughs airily, the sound people use to buff a mark out of a countertop. Tessa praises the sear on the fish. Ethan nods as if he's answered a question no one asked. We pass the beans again. I finish my plate because leaving food behind would be performative in its own way. When the napkin goes down, I fold it to keep my hands busy, not to signal anything other than polite finality. On the porch, the air is cooler by 10 honest degrees. The door closes with a soft click, and Ethan follows, hands in his pockets because he doesn't know what else to do with them. You didn't have to go buy something like that, he says, as if we're talking about a jacket I'll return next week. It felt dramatic. The street is quiet enough to hear the way his jaw tightens the last word. It felt quiet to me, I say. He shifts on his heels and pushes into the space he prefers, advice framed as rescue. You could have asked us for help. I meet his eyes, not long, just long enough to make the next sentence land where it belongs. Like you asked me when you used my money for the boat. His mouth opens, then forgets what it called itself here to do. I don't wait for a patch job. I go back inside, leave my plate as it is, pick up my bag from the chair, and walk to the door. No one follows. The only sound is the latch taking a clean bite of wood. The drive to the ferry is shorter than I remember and quieter. The kind of quiet that isn't the absence of noise, but the absence of tugging. On the deck, the night air has that polished chill I like. I lean on the rail and breathe until the city contracts into a strip of light. The cove waits on the other side like a place that never learned to shout. By the time I turn up the gravel road, the moon has climbed out of a cloud and made the porch board silver. Inside, the small lamp throws a cone of amber on the floorboards. The cabin takes the light and gives it back warmer. Keys and wallet go into the tray I set by the door my first afternoon, a small metal dish that used to hold screws in the shop. The room smells like cedar warming, like a box opening itself. I exhale the held breath of the evening and feel it leave in an orderly line. The laptop wakes to a blue that looks colder than it is. Inbox first, not because I'm hoping for something, but because I've learned to keep the river moving. A new subject line sits at the top as if it has been waiting for my face. Cosigner update. Recreational vessel financing. The sender is a no reply from a bank I recognize too well. I click. The summary states that an electronic signature on file authorizes me as cosigner on a loan for a recreational vessel, effective immediately, my name. The last 4 digits of my ID, a contract number, a link to the PDF for my records. The first rush is heat in the throat, then a spike behind the eyes, then a drop to the floor of the gut. It's the body remembering the old story. Panic, explanation, fixing what you didn't break. I don't move. The cabin holds the moment with me. The horn of a distant ferry drags a long line across the water, and the sound helps the spike flatten into a table I can work on. I download the email as a file, then the PDF, then the activity log. Each save gets a name with today's date and the seconds burned into it. I take screenshots of the summary and the link path. The folder I made on my first night here, the manila folder brought home in digital, receives the files like it was built to hold exactly this weight. I forward nothing. I text no one. I pull the charger from the wall and let the battery do what it can on its own. I set the laptop lid down without closing it and listen to what the water is saying to the shore. The word for this isn't rage. It isn't surprise either. The word is something like clarity once it is cooled. I lay my palm flat on the table as if to check whether it's still true. The wood is steady, the lamp hums its small note. Outside, the cove breathes and returns, breathes and returns. I think of the pane of glass from the table, the way it held without breaking. I think of the key with the blue tag hanging by the door. I think of my own name on a paper I did not sign. I don't rehearse the next conversation. I don't write a line to score points. I label the folder one more time in my head and put the machine to sleep. The night doesn't change shape, but I do. I sit there long enough to know what quiet really feels like when it isn't manufactured, long enough to feel the first notch click into place where ache used to live. If you're still watching and finding these insights helpful, please comment "still here" below to let me know you're with me. Now, let's keep going. The post finds me before the kettle boils. A clipped video sits at the top of the family thread. A neat rectangle that behaves like a mirror until you realize someone has already chosen what it will reflect. It freezes on me halfway through standing from the dinner table, jaw set, eyes turned toward the door. A caption suggests I'm difficult, a man who storms out. The kind of line that keeps polite people satisfied because it lets them pass the salt without thinking. The comments hum with light disapproval, sentences arranged like flowers in hotel vases, presentable and without roots. Behind my stalled figure, a designer purse perches on Marlene's chair. The embroidery on its flap is a maple leaf done in a clean, geometric style. I know the curve of that stem. Years ago, I carved that line into a cutting board for Ethan, a pattern he liked enough to ask me to repeat on a mantel clock. It's a small thing, but small things tell you which way the current is moving. I let the clip replay once with the sound off. In silence, the edit looks cleaner and meaner, a story stripped for speed. The first sting lands sour in the throat, then passes into something colder. I set the phone on the porch rail, palm flat to steady the breath that wants to hurry. The cove throws a faint chop against the rock. Gulls complain once and settle. I wait until the impulse to answer strangers is gone. I am not here to argue with a camera. When I pick the phone back up, I don't tap reply. I scroll to my son's name and press call. He answers in the voice people use when they want to run both friendliness and caution at the same time. "Hey, Dad." I don't preface. "You used my name to sign the boat loan." The sentence sounds like itself. No italics, no thunder. He starts the way I knew he would. "It was temporary, then just to start the file. Then you're reading into an automated email." The words come packaged like customer service foam. They protect nothing, but they fill the box. I let each line fall between us and make no move to catch it. "You used my name," I say again, steady as a plumb line. "You borrowed my name for shine and cut me out of the story when the camera rolled." I keep my voice low. The low is what makes it land. For a breath, he has no tool that fits the cut. "We can talk later," he says. "We just did." I end the call and place the phone face down on the rail. The porch boards accept my weight the way good joists do, without complaint. Across the cove, a seal lifts its head, blinks, and goes back under, uninterested in whatever drama the shore builds for itself. I think about the craft of narrative, how a clean lie needs only 3 strokes, a frame, a label, and a chorus. Then the messenger icon flashes. The first line in the new window is hesitant in a way scripted messages never are. He says he works at a boat showroom I've seen in Ethan's photos, that he shouldn't be reaching out, that he is sorry. He says he recognized my name because he remembers a file created last year with a photo of a driver's license that wasn't the buyer's, mine. He says he can show me the screen if I want. My knuckles go white on the rail without my permission, then let go. I type 3 words. Thank you, yes. The screenshots come like pages laid on a workbench, clean, square, and damning in their own small way. The first shows the internal workflow, customer profile created, date stamp from last summer, initials of the staffer who did the intake. A note in the margin field reads, using father's ID photo for verification, surprise. The next frame shows status lines, pre-approved pending co-signer, subsequent contact attempted. The file path for the uploaded ID ends with a string I recognize from the bank's automated email, a digital rhyme that ties the showroom to the loan the way grain lines flow from one board into another across a glued joint. None of it is theatrical. That's what makes it work. I thank him again. He replies that he's sorry, that he thought it was sweet at the time, that he didn't understand the shape of it until now. I tell him he doesn't need to send more, that he should not get himself in trouble for trying to set a small thing straight. He adds one last image, a redacted export of the contact log that shows my number listed as on file. That's enough. I save the entire conversation, export the chat, download every image and name the files with today's date and the minute, then the second, then the mouse, as if speed could ever outrun the truth. They drop into the evidence folder I made 2 nights ago and click into place like screws taking a thread. I don't forward any of it. I don't send a warning to anyone. I just back the folder up to a thumb drive and put the drive in the manila envelope that holds the deed and the spare key tag. The discipline is calming. It's the same feeling I used to get standing over a miter saw after the blade has stopped. The relief of alignment, the sense that nothing about the cut is personal, only true. Light thins over the water until the cove goes from tin to slate to ink. On the far shore, a porch light pops on and smudges a yellow road across the surface. I think of the purse and its maple leaf, how craft migrates when credit is easy to misplace. I think of the caption under my frozen face, the way a label can become a plan if you let it. I think of my name, which is mine, appearing where I did not put it. The phone lies face down again and the plank beneath my hand holds. Breath goes out. Breath comes in. The day shuts itself without a bang. Whatever comes next won't be loud, it will be exact. Morning arrives with the easy certainty of a level bubble centered between 2 lines. I open the laptop only to confirm sequence, the co-signer email, the dealership screenshots, the dates, and then I close it on purpose like lowering a guardrail. A yellow legal pad waits beside my coffee. I write 3 lines in block letters the way I used to label studs before a cut. 1. Attorney. 2. Paper future. 3. Quiet door. Breakfast is a function, not a ceremony. By the time the ferry reaches Clinton, my breath matches the water again. Langley's main street smells faintly of paper and tide. The attorney's office sits above a gallery, a square room with a window framing the harbor, licenses in modest frames, one plant that could use a drink. The desk is so clear I trust it without thinking. He shakes my hand and asks the one question that sounds like a tool you actually use. Tell me what future you want to protect. I keep my answer to a paragraph. No lawsuits today, no speeches, just a structure that takes the place of pleading. He sketches the framework with a pen on his legal pad. A revocable trust keeps control with you. Title assets into it. Serve as your own trustee now. Name a successor trustee who can execute without ceremony later. Privacy, continuity, less theater. He lists categories like a carpenter lays out cuts, House, accounts, personal property with meaning but not fuss. He folds the paper and starts a fresh sheet while the copier warms. We move to the will. He calls it a pour-over, the way you call a good coffee what it is. Anything left outside will fall into the trust and be handled there. The relief I feel is the relief of clean manifolds and tidy runs. One route, not a patchwork. I nod and he doesn't press for a story. He understands men who prefer diagrams to monologues. When he asks what standards I want for distribution, I tell him the line I've been measuring in my head since the porch call. No revenge. Structure presence without performance for 2 years. The clause takes shape under his pen. Regular check-ins not staged for public. Practical help that looks like rides to appointments, grocery runs, a boring afternoon endured without filming it, no social exploitation of illness, age, or grief. He reads it back to me to be sure we are hearing the same meaning. We'll add an incentive clause with objective examples. I picture boards laid side by side until grain matches grain. Beneficiaries next. He pulls the forms I'll take to the bank and the credit union to route accounts into the trust on death, so the signatures I make now create a quiet path later. We flag the cabin for a transfer on death recording if the county allows it. If not, the trust still holds it cleanly. He circles the items I can file myself and lists the ones his office will run. The checklist grows like a cut list taped to a shop wall. Then the powers that matter when you'd rather not be asked. Healthcare decision maker and financial power of attorney. I say my niece's name, Lena, because she shows up with no camera and leaves when the work is done. He asks whether she knows. It's steady work, not dramatic, I say when I step into the hall to call her. She answers on the second ring. If you need me, I'm there. I tell her exactly what it entails, no hero angles. That's my lane, she says. Back in the office, we add backups the attorney suggests, because backups are what keep a job site from going sideways. The last page in the stack is a one-page memorandum I didn't know I needed until he offers it. We title it Advancement and record the 6 months' rent I paid last year, with precise dates and the exact figure pulled from the archived receipt. It isn't a slap, it's arithmetic. Any future share, if conditions are met, would be reduced by that advancement. The math itself is the message. Love isn't erased, but it isn't counted twice. He slides the trust for my initials, then the will, then the POAS. The pen moves the way a good blade runs. No chatter, no burn. The notary stamp comes down with a satisfying clack, like a press closing on a joint that will hold. He hands me copies in a manila envelope and another checklist. Retitle accounts, file the deed instrument, bring beneficiary forms to the bank, draft a simple letter of wishes in my own hand. Initial here, sign here, he says, and the rhythm is almost liturgical. By the time I leave, the harbor outside is shifted from pewter to a paler metal. The wind carries that clean brine you only get on weekdays. I drive back along the 2-lane and feel the difference between fury and craft. One flares and eats air, the other builds a room where air can be breathed. At the cabin, I set the envelope on the table and tape the checklists above the bench with blue painter's tape. Beneficiaries, submit, deed file, bank update, letter of wishes, draft. The words sit where I can't ignore them. I pull the door from its hinges and set it on sawhorses. A drop cloth blooms across the floor like a flag that means work, not warning. The paint can opens with a soft pry, and the smell is childhood, iron and something sweet. Brick red looks warm even in cold light. I load the brush and lay the first stroke from rail to stile, long and even, keeping a wet edge. The color takes to the wood the way oil takes to a board properly sanded. It eases in and decides to stay. The second coat will cover whatever the first missed. All honest work accepts that truth. I paint until the door wears the color like skin, not costume. While it tacks, I rinse the brush in a bucket, comb the bristles straight with my fingers, and hang it from a nail to dry. The habit of caring for a tool outlasts the job you bought it for. Light thins. The cove breathes its old breath. Inside, the manila envelope makes a modest hill on the table, no more dramatic than a loaf under a clean towel. I write one more line beneath the checklist. Bank Wednesday. Deed Friday. Wishes Sunday. The sequence calms me. The door dries into its new name, catching the dusk and warming it. I don't post a picture. I don't text a soul. The room receives what the day has become. Not a performance, not a plea, but a plan standing in its own weight. Morning comes gray and square-edged, the kind of sky that makes the cove breathe louder. The brick-red door has cured a shade deeper overnight. In this light, it looks less like paint and more like a decision. I put water on and open the manila folder. The checklists wait where I tape them. Beneficiaries, submit, deed, file, wishes, draft. I run a finger down the margins, not to rush myself, only to keep the line. The kettle clicks off. I pour, carry the mug to the porch, and promise the phone 10 seconds of attention and no more. The first flick is enough. Tessa has posted a short paragraph in a tone designed to be impossible to argue with. When people won't talk, all you can do is send love, followed by a boat and a white heart. The comments stack in tidy ascent, a chorus that knows its part. I don't read the names. I turn the phone face down on the rail and keep it there. The way you set a chisel bevel side away so you don't cut yourself reaching for something else. The cove throws 2 small chops against rock and resets the room in my chest. Mail sits in the box at the lane like a white tooth. Inside, there's a thick envelope in a shade of cream that only law firms use. The letterhead says what it needs to say before the words begin. Cease and desist, defamation. The body cites statements allegedly made by me about Marlene. It requests that I refrain from impugning her character and preserve communications. My body does what bodies do first. Throat heat, a pulse that tries to climb. I read it again, slower, until the heat leaves and the words fall into their shapes. I put the letter flat on the table, open the notebook, and write the date and the sender in block letters. Then I go to the porch to make a call. The attorney answers in a voice that has no appetite for theater. I summarize the letter. He keeps it plain. We'll reply with facts only. I tell him I already have the bank's cosigner notice saved with timestamps and the showroom screenshots with intake notes. Send me the logs, he says. We'll reference signature forensics and IP metadata. We'll also ask them to preserve theirs. His steadiness is a tool that fits my hand. I email the packet while we're still on the call. He thanks me for the organization as if I've handed him a clean-cut list. We hang up without a speech. Before noon, Mr. Alvarez appears at the fence line in his dark pea coat, a small plastic stick between his fingers. Doorbell caught your lane. Might help, he says. He explains his camera faces the road and pings whenever someone stops. The clip shows Ethan the afternoon before the dinner, head down at my mailbox, angling an envelope to catch light. Phone held like a scanner. He doesn't add a moral. He doesn't need to. I thank him and ask if he'll take chowder later in the week. Never say no to chowder, he says, and tips 2 fingers to his cap. Back inside, I slide the USB into the laptop and let the clip fill the screen. The timestamp sits in the corner like a small compass. I copy the file, hash it, and write the hash string into my notebook beside the words, mailbox clip, before dinner. I drop the video into the evidence folder and name it with the date, the hour, the minute, down to the second. The discipline feels like sanding, long, even strokes take off the fuzz and reveal the profile underneath. I place the USB in a zip bag and tuck it into the manila folder. 3 holes punch through the plastic so it binds with the rest. In the afternoon, the attorney's reply lands in my inbox. The letter is crisp, 3 paragraphs built like a frame. Acknowledge receipt, deny defamatory statements, state that we will rely on the audit trail for the electronic signature, IP addresses associated with the transaction and records held by custodians. Invite opposing counsel to preserve their own metadata. Decline further comment. There's no flourish. The power sits in the invitation to fax. I print it for the folder. The printer leaves a faint roller mark at the bottom margin, a small human error that reminds me people, not machines, make order out of noise. The phone buzzes once with a new wave of likes under Tessa's post. I lift it long enough to put it on airplane mode so the device stops rehearsing for an argument I won't attend. Paper, not posts. I make 2 columns in the notebook to keep myself honest. What I know versus what I'll say. Under no, I list bank email plus PDF, showroom intake screenshots, doorbell clip, my transfer receipt from last year, my lack of any public statements about Marlene. Under say, I write only, refer to counsel's letter. The second column is short on purpose. Leaving it short is a kind of strength I didn't have in other decades. Evening draws the red door into a soft glow. I take a pine offcut from the stack and run sandpaper with the grain until it stops resisting. A little oil in the board answers with depth it didn't show when it was rough. The room takes on the smell of shop work and low tide. Across the cove, a porch light smears a yellow path. I think of all the bulbs that mean welcome and of the ones that mean watch yourself. Mine is neither tonight. It's just a light for a door that belongs to this house and not to any story running on a screen. I check the folder spine one more time, then close the laptop and set it under the edge of the manila hill, a shape so ordinary it almost disappears. The phone stays face down. The kettle cools to a sound like distant rain. I sit and let breath meet the water's pace. Out, in, unhurried. Consequences have arrived right on schedule. Panic hasn't. The next things I have to do are simple and drafted. Forms, filings, a letter in my own hand that explains who gets what and why. I don't rehearse an argument. I don't write a post. I write a small line at the bottom of the checklist, USB to safe, and underline it once. The cove breathes. I do too. Morning starts like a checklist snapping to a clipboard. The porch air is clean and salt-bitten. The red door holds its new color like it was always meant to be here. On the table, the manila envelope waits beside my wallet and IDs. I read the lines I taped above the bench. Beneficiaries. Submit. Deed file. Bank update. Wishes. Draft. And tuck the trust papers, notarized pages, and a pen into the envelope. The phone is only a tool today. Maps, confirmation emails, nothing else. I set it to do not disturb and slip it into my jacket. At the credit union, a rep in a navy cardigan ushers me into a short glass room that smells like toner. We go page by page. She prints the pay on death forms, and I sign where the arrows ask. She reads back the titling I requested, accounts payable to the Revocable Living Trust, then swivels the screen to show the changes. These will route to the trust, she says, the sentence clicking into place like the first screw in a hinge. Initial here and here. The pen moves without drag. When we finish, she stacks the confirmations and caps them with a paper clip. The relief that lands in my ribs is small and clean, the kind you get when a cabinet door closes flush for the first time. At the county recorder's office, a clerk with a soft stamp pad takes the deed instrument across the counter as if she has been expecting it. Fluorescents buzz overhead. She checks parcel numbers, confirms names, and levels the page beneath her hand. The stamp comes down with a soft thud, a physical seal like a mallet settling a joint. You'll receive the recorded copy by mail, she says. I nod, fold the receipt, and slide it into the envelope. The door to the street feels wider when I push through. Back at the cabin, I clear the table and set out a sheet of heavy paper. I write a heading, Letter of Wishes, in small block letters, then let my hand find the voice that fits. It isn't legal language, the trust holds the law. This is the story of the values that drove the numbers. I write about showing up quietly, about errands that never make a photograph, about how kindness looks like rides to appointments and waiting rooms endured without commentary. I write that no one owes performance in exchange for love, and that the only proof needed is time spent without a camera. I keep it plain and kind. I sign and date it and lay it on top of the trust binder. The weight it adds is measured in calm. The donor-advised fund takes shape on the laptop in 10 careful minutes. I choose the local education foundation that channels small grants to trade students and apprentice carpenters, kids like I was, more hands than money. I set a modest annual target, enough to put tools into a few new hands each year. The confirmation email arrives with a string of letters and numbers that mean it exists in the world. I print it, slip it behind the letter of wishes, and imagine a teenager opening a box that smells like oiled steel and pine and possibility. The sign comes next. I pull a straight-grained pine board from the stack and square the ends with 2 clean cuts. Pencil first. Come in if you mean it. No cameras. The letters sit firm and simple. No flourishes. I set the chisel at the first capital C and tap with the mallet until the V groove opens like a small riverbed. Slow, clean cuts keep the fibers from tearing. The knife follows the pencil the way a good plan follows a steady mind. By the time the phrase runs true from left to right, the floor is dusted with pale curls that smell like warm bread. Sanding lifts the fuzz. A wipe of oil turns the letters dark and the field honey grain rising like topography. 2 pilot holes at the top corners and the board is ready to speak. Lena texts when the ferry docks, on my way, and no more. She arrives with a paper-wrapped bundle of tulips and the kind of face that doesn't ask for a camera. We sit on the porch with mugs that fog in the October air. I lay out what the POA means in practice. Appointments if I can't make them, bills if I can't sign, decisions if I can't speak. It's steady work, appointments, bills if I can't, no cameras, I say. She nods and meets my eye. I'll show up. Quiet is fine. I hand her the letter of wishes. She reads it without rushing, thumb resting on the page like a holdfast. This sounds like you, she says. We agree on where the originals will live, what copies she'll carry, and what we won't do. We won't post, we won't explain, we won't rehearse conversations for rooms that don't exist. Light turns warm along the porch rail. I bring the sign, the drill, and 2 brass screws. Standing on the step, I hold the board beneath the bell until the bubble in the level floats dead center. The bit drives through pine and into the header cleanly. The screws seat with that small final squeak brass always gives wood. The words hang true at the first try. The red door beside it glows like an ember banked for the night. We don't say much after that. The work has already said it. We lean on the rail and let the cove breathe for us. Out, in, out. A seal surfaces and disappears. Somewhere across the water, a dog barks and then thinks better of it. I file the day's receipts and confirmations into the manila envelope. Tuck the envelope into the drawer with the spare keys and slide the drawer closed. The phone lies face down on the table, still in do not disturb. On the porch, 2 mugs send up their thin threads of steam, and for a long, easy minute, nothing asks to be more than it is. The build isn't finished forever. It's finished for today. That's enough. The mail truck leaves 2 faint parallel tracks in the damp gravel, a tidy signature where the lane meets the road. I walk down with my hands in my jacket pockets, the air crisp enough to make the skin of my face feel new. In the box sits a white window envelope with the bank's blue logo. Back up at the porch, I slid it along the top with a chisel edge and slide the letter out on the table. The first line names the account. The second line names me. The third line says what the body has been hoping to read without admitting it. Correction notice. Co-signer removed. A single sentence follows, apologizing for any inconvenience this may have caused. I read it twice so the words stop being theoretical and start belonging to the day. The red door holds the morning light like a palm. The discipline is the same as always. I flatten the page, take a photo with the phone for the file, scan it to a PDF, and name it with the date, hour, and minute. It drops into the evidence folder with a soft click. I print a copy for the manila envelope and slide it behind the attorney's reply and the stamped recording receipt. In the notebook, I write a clean line in block letters. Loan, name removed, 11/19. A small piece inside my chest unknots and lays flat, not victory, alignment. The table gets a reset. I stack the scanner, coil the cable, square the folders. The checklist above the bench has fewer teeth now. I draw a line through beneficiaries, submit, and another through deed file. Wishes draft is already crossed. I leave bank update uncrossed as a nudge to bring the beneficiary forms in person one more time. The phone goes face down, not in defiance but in good shop practice. Edge away, tool safe. A ferry horn swings a long note across the cove, and somewhere a gull changes its mind. From the drawer, I take a thin cardboard envelope, a drawing on school paper, the kind that goes soft at the corners if you touch it too much. Ethan, 8 or 9, crayon boat with a red hull and 4 fat blue waves under it, smoke coming from a stack because cartoons told him boats breathe like trains. I dust the glass with my sleeve and set it on the shelf beside a folded index card I wrote last month. Birthday. Remember Daniel first. The two look at each other without argument. That's enough of a ceremony. The chowder smells like salt and dill when I ladle it into a container and seal the lid with a rubber band. I write a tag, "For your fence side company," and walk it down the path that skirts the hedge. Mr. Alvarez is outside in his pea coat, hat pulled low, hands in his sleeves. He sees the container and pretends surprise in the dignified way older men approve of being fed. "You didn't have to," he says. "I like to," I answer and pass it over the fence. He weighs it in his palm like a tool and nods once. Then I'll return the favor. Neither of us says with what or when. He doesn't ask what news the mail brought, and I don't volunteer. Some exchanges are complete without details. Back home, the house asks for small things and gets them. The pantry hinge has been whispering for a week. I back the screws out, rub a breath of wax along the threads, set them again until the face is true. The porch gets a sweep. Pine needles, a scatter of cedar tips, grit from the lane. I oil the little pine offcut I've been using as a coaster and watch the grain darken as if it were remembering rain. The sign under the bell, "Come in if you mean it." No cameras. Warms a shade where the sun slides under the eaves. The letters look deeper now that the oil has had time to cure in the cuts. I slice bread, lay out smoked salmon, and heat broth in a small pot for lunch. The table takes a plate, a knife, a mug. I set a second mug beside the first without thinking too hard about it. A habit born from the kind of hope that doesn't overtalk itself. If nobody arrives, nothing is wasted. If someone does, the chair won't have to be pulled from the corner cold. The clock on the wall advances with the sound of a restrained heartbeat. Afternoon thins the color out of the cove until it holds more metal than blue. I check the manila folder one more time, not because I doubt it, but because weight in the hand is an argument that never yells. The edges are a little worn now, furred like a tool handle that has seen work. Inside, the documents lean on one another in the order they were made. Trust, will, powers of attorney, advancement memo, recorder stamp, attorney's reply, screenshots, bank correction. They make a neat hill under my palm. I put the folder back, close the drawer, and feel the latch catch with that satisfying shallow bite good carpenters aim for. Evening brings a buoy bell, then quiet. I take the drawing down to the table and look again at the way the crayon pressed heavy at the corners where the hull curves, how children declare weight by doubling down on wax. I don't try to splice memory into moral. I return it to the shelf, stand the index card next to it, and straighten both until their bottoms are square with the wood. The living room lamp spills a cone of gold that warms the red door until it looks almost like muscle. Outside, I crack the door and let the water in. The sign nudges the air. The extra mug on the rail releases a ribbon of steam. My phone stays quiet. The part of me that used to fish for interruptions has gone still. The routine is not a trick. It is the shape the days take when you stop auditioning. I sit down and breathe with what is here, the hum of the lamp, the small tick of cooling metal, the water's patient breath in and out, a porched house deciding it can trust the man who lives in it. There will be other pieces of mail. Some will ask for money. Some will carry holiday greetings with names printed by machines. Some will be nothing. The folder will catch what matters and let the rest go. I lay a hand on the table and feel the finish I rubbed into it last week, the way oil makes wood less thirsty. Peace feels like that, absorption without stain. The red door stands open a hand's width. The shelf holds a child's boat and a man's reminder. The cove answers itself. I don't make a speech about any of it. I finish my meal, rinse the cup, and set it upside down to dry. The night folds around the cabin in a clean line, and I match my breath to the water until both of us disappear into the dark the way true things do, quiet, and without the need to be seen. Frost feathers the porch rail, a thin gloss that makes the early light look sharper than it is. I warm the oven and pull flour, sugar, and cinnamon from the cupboard. The bowl waits like a small job site. Order first, then motion. Butter goes in with a soft knock. Eggs follow. Milk after that. The smell comes early, before anything is risen. Cinnamon waking in air that's still cold enough to bite. I line a pan, scrape the batter smooth, and slide the loaf into heat. The timer's quiet tick keeps time with the buoy bell beyond the trees. Coffee blooms in the cone and settles into the mug dark as the sound. I prop the red door open a hand's width with a brass hook I screwed in yesterday, just enough to let winter's brightness reach the floorboards. The door glows like a coal that has decided to last. On the wall above the bench, the checklists have gone dull with completion. I don't pull them down. A finished map still tells the truth of the road. Before the timer calls, I open the drawer and lift the trust binder. The letter of wishes sits near the top, my handwriting plain on heavy paper. I read one line, presence without performance, and close the folder again. Philosophy belongs to acts. The papers will carry weight with or without my eyes on them. The folder goes back and the drawer shuts with a known bite. When I take the loaf out and set it on the rack, the room tilts toward comfort in a way that asks nothing in return. I cut a small end slice. The heel is always mine, and the steam lifts like a ribbon that doesn't need to be tied to anything. Outside, gulls mark the quiet with a few notes, then let it be. I pour coffee and carry both to the porch rail. The sign under the bell, "Come in if you mean it. No cameras," stands easy beside the door like a friend who knows when not to talk. On the counter sits a cutting board I carved last week when the maple leaf came back around in my head. It's the old motif, but the lines belong to my hand again. No brand, no caption, no borrowed shine. I oil the board with a clean cloth until the leaf darkens and the field turns the color of new toast. Craft returns to the maker without announcement. You don't reclaim it with a speech, you do the work again. If I had to say it cleanly, I didn't smash a stage. I pulled my plug. Money, signature, attention, each wire out of the socket one by one until the show that fed on me dimmed to its proper wattage. Paper took the place of pleading. Structure answered where apology used to stand. The folder on the shelf is a better bodyguard than rage ever was. I put a second mug on the rail. It's a small habit now, space kept for a person who might be real on a day that isn't this one. The hook holds the door a hand's width. The sign says what it has to say and then allows silence to say the rest. A path exists for anyone who wants to walk it. Show up camera-free, do the dull errands, sit through the ordinary. Repeat. The trust names, conditions, and time. I don't say I hope. I acknowledge the road is there. The shore asks for footsteps, and I let it have them. Frost crunches under my boots on the path that threads between Salal and Cedar. At the waterline, the winter light turns the cove into layered metal. Pewter on steel, a knife's reflection on a shallow pan. A fairy horn carries across, low and exact, the throat of a machine that knows its job. I breathe with it. 4 counts in, 6 out. Let the exhale drag the rest of the room from my shoulders. I stand until my fingers feel wooden inside my gloves and head back up through the thin sun. Inside again, I put the board back on its hook and wash the cup. The second mug keeps watch on the rail, steam thinning into air that no longer needs proof. I take inventory without flourishes. What remains? Hands that still know wood, a house tuned to the pace I can keep, a niece who answers on the second ring, a neighbor who knocks when there's a reason and not for sport. What's been cut away? The compulsion to be seen, the urge to explain myself to people, rehearsing for a part I'm done auditioning for. At the table, I allow myself 2 short lines, spoken low enough that only the door could claim to hear them. Remember Daniel first. Keep the door kind, I don't repeat them. Vows work better when they sound like shop rules than like poems. The afternoon goes bright and thin, then tilts back toward blue. I wrap the remaining loaf in paper for tomorrow and set it where the drafts won't find it. The trust binder stays shut. The manila folder's edges have softened with use and look right that way. I oil a squeak from the porch hinge and wipe up the drips. When the light fades enough that the red door gathers the room's glow toward it, I switch on the lamp and let the color do what it does best. Hold warmth without performance. I think about how often a life turns not on declarations, but on small positions held again and again. The brass hook that keeps the door at one hand's width, the extra mug that either will or won't be needed, the line in a letter that says presence without performance and means it, the hand that pulls a plug and leaves the stage to the people who built it for themselves. Tomorrow could bring nothing or something, mail or quiet, a knock or a gull's single cry. The rules don't change, the welcome doesn't either. I close the door to the width of the hook and slide the bolt just enough to feel the metal find its seat. The sign hangs true. The cove keeps breathing whether I look at it or not. I set the cup upside down to dry and wipe the last crumbs into my palm. The house wraps its arms of cedar and paint and honest joints around the small, warm center of the evening and holds. I stand for one long, ordinary minute and match my breath to water I cannot see, but know by heart, out, in, until words thin to nothing, and what's left is the quiet you get when you no longer ask to be remembered by anyone but yourself. In the end, the loudest moment is the one where nothing needs to be said. A door cracks open to winter light, a kettle cools, and a house learns the rhythm of a quieter life. After all the edits and captions, after all the performances dressed up as care, what remains is simple. Paper over noise, boundaries over bargaining, presence over performance. Peace is not a prize someone hands over. Peace is a craft, measured, cut, sanded, and finished by the one who must live inside it. There is a kind of courage that does not look good on camera. It doesn't go viral because it refuses to audition. It is the courage to step off a borrowed stage, to pull your own plug, and to wire your days to something steadier than applause. It signs what needs signing, files what needs filing, and lets the water breathe without asking it to sing. It does the plain work of building a life that will not collapse when the audience wanders off. Forgiveness, when it comes, arrives as structure before it arrives as feeling. It looks like a boundary drawn in warm light and held with quiet hands. It looks like rules that protect love from spectacle. Show up without a camera, help without a headline, endure the ordinary without a script. It is less about saying, "I forgive," and more about living in a way that no longer requires a performance contract from anyone, including yourself. There is also the humility of paperwork, the honesty of dates and signatures. We learn that a signature can be stolen, but a name can be reclaimed, that a story can be edited, but truth leaves a trail, that a life can be narrated by strangers until you refuse the narrator's chair. Structure is not the enemy of the heart. Structure is the scaffolding that lets a heart heal in its own time. It is a trust set up in ink and a trust rebuilt inside the chest. And then there is welcome, the kind that glows but does not glare. A door held open a hand's width says more than any speech. You may come in if you mean it. Come with empty hands and a whole voice. Come ready for errands no one will ever applaud. Come to sit through the slow parts that make a life real. The world has enough entrances that require costumes. Let this one ask only for attention and care. Grace remains possible, not because the past is erased, but because the present has been rewired to hold what the past could not. The older we get, the more we understand that love is a series of small positions held again and again. Put the tool away the safe way. Speak the line that is true and only that line. Set the extra cup out even when no one knocks, and don't mistake silence for failure. Remember yourself first, not as an act of selfishness, but as the first promise you keep so every other promise has a place to stand. That is how loneliness turns into solitude, and how solitude turns into company when it's finally offered on honest terms. But if there is a lesson to carry, it may be this. Choose the quiet that costs you nothing you can't afford. Choose the door that opens with a rule instead of a performance. Choose the kind of strength that can set a table without asking anyone to applaud. A life can be both open and protected, both generous and guarded, both warm and wise. It can be built from cedar and ink and the breath of a tide that knows how to leave and return without drama. Thank you for staying with this story through the pauses, through the questions, through the stillness that often says more than any argument. If something here rang true, we'd love to hear what line stayed with you. Share a thought in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, or mark the moment that hit home. Your reflections help this community keep its own honest rhythm. And if this kind of storytelling matters to you, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you'll know when the next tale arrives. Bring someone along who might need the reminder that boundaries can be kind, paperwork can be merciful, and love can be both steady and quiet. Until then, keep a light on, keep an extra cup ready, and keep listening for the water's breath just beyond the door.